Chapter 271. What happened to my ears? Did the word honey come out of Perez's mouth? It was Perez who was embarrassed to even call himself that when I was playing around in the carriage, leaving Lombardy, and didn't know where to put himself. But why all of a sudden? Huh, honey? Yeah. When I asked my question, Perez lengthening his words and answered, No, I didn't call you. Seeing my embarrassment clearly, he even smiled and hugged me tightly. You weren't there before, so I came to find you. I was worried. Huh? I'm sorry, just being there is a bit boring. Really? Good job. The touch of stroking my hair and forehead is also outspoken. Suspicious, suspicious. I looked at Perez with squinty eyes. I don't know when it's just the two of us, but in a place where other people are together, this kind of relentless touch, this is not like him. It's like you're acting like you're looking at others. At that moment, I could see Perez's eyes gliding as he looked down at me affectionately. And at the end of his gaze that I secretly followed, I was able to find the answer to this situation. It was Mortega Lupe, who was standing still with a shocked face. By the way, what about you? Perez, who had some cool eyes, asked Mortega Lupe. Maybe it's just his personality as well as his innocent looks. Mortega couldn't answer as if he were a bit dumbfounded. He only looked at me and Perez with his trembling eyes alternately. It seems that he is very surprised by the sudden love act between the couple. Yes, it could be. It was when I tried to introduce myself, hiding my embarrassment. This is Mortega. I'm sorry, excuse me. I was just about to talk about the Lombardi Scholarship Foundation. That's too bad. I was going to persuade him. Later, I had to send a formal letter and make a proposal. Since no artist refuses the Lombardi Foundation's proposal, Mortega Lupe will also accept it. Thinking so, I watched Mortega Lupe's back as he mixed with people. Why? Until I felt the gentle touch of stroking my cheek. As I turned my head along the touch, I met Perez's eyes. It was a persistent eye somewhere. What? Why are you keep looking at him? Well, that's too bad. Maybe I'm not my grandfather's granddaughter for nothing. Every time I met talented people, I would find myself craving to put a Lombardi name tag on them. Are you sad? Yes, I suppose, although he is still only a singer on board. Mortega Lopez, The Pledge of Love is a song that will soon reborn as one of the most famous singers. It is also scheduled to become a favorite song for men in the empire who propose marriage. Of course, that is a few years later, but I can't say this to Perez. I really liked the song, so was the voice. Voice. It was a beautiful voice, but it must be said that it is a voice that makes people listen automatically. He was such a powerful singer. It's not a made up word. In fact, the Mortega Lupe in my previous life was popular because of his rich voice and tone. However, Perez's reaction is a bit strange. You like my voice too? He muttered in a somber tone somewhere. Huh? Of course it is. My personal preference is a low voice like Perez rather than a voice like Mortega Lupe. But Mortega Lupe is a singer, and with the support of the Lombardi Foundation, it can become even bigger. Wait a minute. I stopped talking and looked up at Perez. He was still glumly looking at the direction Mortega Lupe disappeared. No, he was staring. No way. Perez, I tugged at the hem of his clothes, then red eyes looked at me. What did you call me earlier? Huh? Look at this. I think you're trying to pretend you don't know, but your eyes are shaking. As I watched Perez's ears slowly turn red, I leaned slightly towards him and said a little, Honey. Startled, Perez's chest, which I was hugging, trembled slightly. Right, right? You said honey to me earlier, didn't you? After hesitating for a while, finally nodded. The redness had already spread to his neck. Oh, I shouldn't laugh, I asked, dragging down the corners of my lips that were about to go up. I thought you didn't use that nickname. Come to think of it, I think we need a more convincing performance to maintain camouflage status. Was it because of the camouflage status? Speechless. Are you by any chance jealous? His body flicked once more. Oh, I can't stand it. Humph. Eventually, the laughter escaped from between my lips. Then Perez's ears grew even more red. Oh, he's going to get upset. No, why? Why are you jealous? I patted Perez's chest and continued talking as if to comfort him. It was just a brief conversation. I've seen him for a long time, but this is the first time I've seen him so blatantly jealous. That's it. Perez, who had kept his mouth shut for a moment, answered slowly, because he was looking at you with that kind of eyes. That kind of eyes? The eyes that you can take your eyes off because it shine brightly. Unlike sweet words, his voice is heavy. I could feel the arm holding my waist a little tighter, as if afraid of losing me. It was me who was bewildered by the unexpected words now. It's not like that. I smiled on purpose and said lightly, and how do you know that? By looking at it from a distance. I know, but Perez's answer was adamant, because I did. A hard finger rubbed my chin gently, because I was like that the day I first saw you in the forest. As if reminiscing on that day, Perez's eyes, which had hardened, spread warmth. With a smile that you can barely see, in an instant it was a face that seemed to be able to hear the rustling of green forest in the wind. It was a big deal. Just a moment ago, my heart started beating faster than I did when Perez grabbed my hat. So you were jealous? In an attempt to relax, I taunted Perez to make fun of him. However, this time it was me who was rather perplexed. The tips of his ears were still red, but Paris looked down at me with his unshaken eyes and said, "So I was jealous. It's enough for me to see you like that. There are already too much." Perez murmured, adding a few words that didn't make much sense, and Tia, the finger that had been stroking my chin, suddenly came up to my lips. His slightly rough fingertips rubbed my sensitive skin as if he was pressing it. Perez's red eyes, not knowing what to see, sunk dark. "I'm more jealous than you think." "Huh?" "And I'm a more humble man than you think." "Oh, yeah?" Still, Paris took my hand and dragged me, kissing his lips on it. "But please don't abandon me." Oh, his lips rested on the thin skin of the back of my hand. Surprised by the sensation, I tried to pull out my hand, but Paris' large fingers took the gap and wrapped it around my hand even more. Wait a minute. I was going to ask him to let go. Paris' subsequent actions made me speechless. "Promise me." He was rubbing his cheek on the back of my hand. "You won't abandon me." Like a big beast who craves his owner's affection. You really, where did you learn this dangerous aegyo?" I want to yell at him if they're his academy colleagues, but I couldn't. If you are a person with a well-attached heart, you will not be able to get angry at those red eyes that come face to face with the corners of his eyes down. Even if you ask me to let you go, I won't let you go, I said, pulling Para's hand. "Got it. Let's go have dinner. You're talking nonsense because you're hungry." As I strode forward and started walking, a large body was gently dragged along. Paris has always been like that. With the power to immobilize anyone, he has never failed to follow my lead. And what to throw away? Paris, yes, Tia. Don't say such strange things again. I have no intention to throw it away. You. Speechless, Paris didn't say anything. I hope he's not crying. Looking back at the creeping worries, to my surprise, he was smiling. His eyes were nicely folded, and his red lips were open like flowers, with a very happy face. Perez nodded his head as he clasped his tightly clasped hands. "Right, even if you throw me away, I won't be thrown away." No, maybe he looks relieved as if he found the answer. I looked at him for a moment and then urged him again. "Okay then, let's go eat. If you want to see the fireworks after dinner, you should take the best spot first." Haha. Perez's delightful laugh, as if heard from afar, followed our steps. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The first dinner on cruise was excellent. It was a rich dinner with a light southern style and sweet and sour eastern dishes. After we finished eating, we walked towards the deck. The back deck is more famous than the front deck. This is something my father and Clarivan have emphasized over and over again. Normal people will flock to the slightly larger front deck. That's why the back is even better. It was when we reached the back deck leisurely while continuing the conversation. There was something beyond the railing of the ship where I had unintentionally cast my gaze. Huh. It was a boat approaching the cruise quietly through the dark river, without lighting a single light. Mixed with darkness, the speed of approaching was very fast. It meant that it wasn't an ordinary fishing boat. What boat is that? Aside from us, the people who had been on the back deck in advance discovered one or two boats and began to steer. Although such smaller in size, the momentum to quickly cling to the side of the cruise was far from friendly. And at some point, the fire lit up on the boat. The first ones to be seen were the Susu soldiers full of boats. Among them, a soldier who was at the forefront of the boat shouted loudly, "Stop the ship! From now on, there will be a checkpoint according to the command of Lord Chanton Susu." The end. Oh, Chanton is getting more and more annoying. End of chapter 271. Chapter 272. Checkpoint. A commotion among the people spread like flames in the dry forest in an instant. "Can't we stop the ship now?" The atmosphere on the deck froze as the soldiers' shout resounded over the quiet river. Only the torches that lit up the Susu warship burned horribly. "Everyone, lower the anchor. Get the ladder ready." It seems that the crew of the cruise did not expect the appearance of the Susu military ship at all. Their behavior running around on the deck was full of embarrassment. In the meantime, the cruise was slowing down, but the military ship threateningly drove the ship as if it could not wait for even a moment. "Oh, isn't this dangerous? They're going to bump into us," everyone shouted with their pale faces. To make matters worse, the width of the river that was wide enough to be a small sea a while ago was getting narrower. A turn where the river narrows located within the domain of the Susu family. The name of an area popped into my mind at familiar information. Here, it's Tamal. After Chanton Susu's failed attempt to open the port, it was the place where the construction of narrowing the river was started recently. If of course the purpose is to increase Susu's influence in eastern trade led by Lombardy. Oh my god. In the end, the crews had no choice but to slow down to the point of tilting once, and screams of startled passengers erupted here and there. However, the soldiers of Sisu who were the cause of all this showed no signs of apologizing. But according to the command of the soldier standing on the head of the boat, the military ship was tied tightly to the crews and climbed onto the deck one by one. TN. What? Isn't this piracy? They act like a thief. And the soldier, who seemed to be the last person in charge, shouted with a loud voice, "There will be a checkpoint from now on, so everyone please cooperate. If you rebel or come out uncooperatively at the checkpoint, I will dismiss it as a protest against Lord Susu." Such a gangster. I've never heard of anything like this. A checkpoint that is suddenly enforced by stopping a passing tourist ship without asking for permission. If the river in the Tamil region became narrower and more frequent, as Chantan Susu intended, the cruise business would be hit hard. No, that's how can you be so reckless? The aristocrats around made dissatisfied voices, but that was all. Although it is clearly unfair treatment, the atmosphere of the soldiers of Susu is so ferocious that it is scary for them to even step forward. Larita, stay behind me for a moment. Paris called me under a pseudonym and hid me behind his back. At the same time, I could see him putting his hand on his waist like a habit, then hardening his impression. It was because he left the sword he was always carrying in the room and came out. I stood behind Perez and looked around. As the ID checks progressed, one by one, the atmosphere was getting worse. But strangely, I wasn't scared or anxious. It was not a groundless peace. The fake identity saved by Violet has never been so easily revealed. And even if the wanted people they are talking about are us, and our identities are discovered by chance, what will they do? Even if you touch one of Perez's fingertips right now, that would be treason. Of course, my plan to move secretly in the east would go awry. But that's it. Besides, Perez is protecting me. A large back was covering me from the eyes of the soldiers. It was only the back of one person, but it felt like hiding in the safest place in the world. TN. OFC. Of course, it's the back of the Emperor of the Empire. I inadvertently grabbed the hem of Perez's clothes with thoughts that were not appropriate for the situation. How did he accept it? Perez reached back with one of his hands and held my hand firmly. Instead of pulling out my hand, saying it's okay, I just stuck my head out to figure out the situation on the deck. Behind the soldiers who spread here and there and checked their ID cards with strict eyes, I saw a group of about 20 people were seen separately moving down toward the cargo compartment below. It was strange. Searching for the cargo compartment. Hopefully there was smuggling. Is that what they think? It was time as I tilted my head in doubt. Oh, didn't I say that I would go to my room and get my ID? Just around the corner, a man shouted loudly. Everyone's eyes, including me and Paris, naturally turned to that direction. It seemed that the man's face was not just because of dissatisfaction with the inspection. He is fighting against the soldier, Susu, in drunkenness. But that courage didn't last long. Then I will accompany you to your room, Soldier Susu said as he placed his hand on the handle of the sword hanging from his waist. Yes, then. The man who swallowed his saliva replied with a face that quickly ran away from alcohol. But no one laughed at such a man, because there were few people who could stand proudly in front of so many soldiers who seemed to draw their swords right away if they made a mistake. And it was Paris' turn. Show me your ID, the short soldier of Susu said, reaching out one hand to Perez, and the rest of his hand held the scabbard. Here it is. Perez showed the ID of Chaser Glowa with a nonchalant face. As Soldier Susu looked at his ID card more closely than expected, I clenched Perez's hand without realizing it. I changed my hair color by dyeing it, and I know that there is no problem with my ID card. It was a different matter from being nervous. Flap, flap. The soldier looked quite carefully at the page of the ID card, which was the same as the small booklet. It was a procedure to check whether the eye color that could not be changed artificially and the seal of the government office that issued the ID were genuine. Where are you from? It's Lombardy region. The people in front didn't take this long. The soldier began to ask Paris some questions. Of course, Paris answered without hesitation. The problem wasn't Paris. Wait, who's hiding behind you? The soldier pointed at me and asked sharply. She is my wife. Wife? The soldier squinted and soon frowned and said, I need to check her face, so get out of the way. Speechless, but Perez did not move. Rather, he just held my hand tighter and looked down at Soldier Susu. Then the atmosphere quickly turned bloody. Hey, are you daring to refuse the checkpoint now? From what I've seen so far, the wanted person seems to be an adult male, but women aren't even the subjects of inspection. I'm going to check if the person you claim to be your wife is a woman or a man in a dress. Check. Perez, who had maintained a respectful face until now, suddenly changed violently. Perez took a half step Perez took a half step towards the soldier and asked in a low voice, Tell me, how are you going to check? Oh, that's the overwhelming energy of Perez, which started to come out at once, as if he had pulled out a sharpened sword, made the soldier hesitate and take a step backwards. Perez, who had been staring at the soldier with cold eyes for a moment, slowly opened his mouth. I have confirmed that there is nothing wrong with my ID and that I am not the wanted person you are looking for. Stop wasting any more time and move on to the next person. It was a polite way of speaking again, but the expressionless face remained the same. Here you are. Eventually, the soldier, who could not overcome the silent pressure, returned Perez's ID card. It was then someone shouted loudly from the side of the stairs leading to the cargo compartment. Catch him. He's wanted. The wanted person is running away. Soon after, a loud banging noise started to get louder and louder up the stairs. And after a while, the one that appeared as if jumping out of the downstairs. That man must be. I'm familiar to it. His hair was messy and his clothes were torn apart, but I know the man's appearance a few years ago. Klaus, the commander of the Knights of Angenes who tried to escape Rabini from the Imperial Palace prison until the end. Ethan Klaus. TN FYI, he appeared at chapter 160. Without realizing it, his name leaked out of my mouth. It was a very small voice compared to the shouts of the soldiers of Susu, clearly. However, at that moment, Klaus' movement stopped like a lie. Just as he was about to jump under the ship right away, he stood tall. Come on, I got him. Grab him right now. The soldier Susu, who did not miss the opportunity, quickly knocked Klaus to the floor and shouted. But Ethan Klaus did not see them. There was only one place where the blood-stained eyes went through the scattered hair. It was me. End of chapter 272. Chapter 273. Just as I recognized Ethan Klaus at once, he saw my true identity, whose hair color had changed at once. You're the girl. My whole body stiffened and didn't move. I wanted to hide behind Perez's back again, but it didn't go my way. All of a sudden, Klaus got on his back where some of Susu's soldiers were, and were trying to tie his hands and feet with a rope. But as if he didn't care about such things, his burning gaze was only directed at me. Hey, oh, hey. And Ethan Klaus began to laugh. Like the one who had lost everything saw a ray of light before his eyes. Both corners of his mouth sprang up, and dark blood veins stood on his forehead. Ha 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 ha. The soldiers frowned at the behavior of the wanted man, who suddenly began to laugh. Why is this guy? I don't know. He must have gone crazy thinking it's over now. Yes, tie it well. Gah, Ethan Klaus got up from his seat, twisting his whole body with a scream. The rope that bound Klaus' hands and feet, which had been there a while ago, was broken in vain, and the soldiers surrounding him fell like fallen leaves. Ethan Klaus, who was freed, rushed towards me, crawling on all fours. I will kill you. With a bloody scream, his hands covered with wounds reached out toward me, as if he was going to strangle me with his bare hands because he had no weapon. However, his body, exhausted from his long escape life, was not completely healed, to the point where his splendid career of being the commander of the Knight of Angenes was overshadowed. He was just ahead of his life, trying to kill me. How dare you? How dare you? Perez moved with a low voice. He naturally reached out and pulled out a soldier's sword that was checking his ID card and rolled it once in his big hand as if it were his own. And he drew it up like he was swinging it. No, I thought so. At that moment, all I could see was Perez's large hand that covered my eyes. Ah! Ethan Claw's screams seemed to be heard from a very distance. Soon the sound of the soldiers, who had been observing the situation in a daze, rumbled, mixed with the screams of evil. That bitch! I have to kill that girl! Let go of this! But even that sound faded away at some point. Clang! Perez threw the sword so he was holding randomly on the floor and stood in front of me. Then his big hands covered my ear. Ethan Cloud's scream became smaller. The chaos on the deck was also faded away. Until everything subsided, the warmth that touched my ear and Perez's red eyes protected my world. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Ethan Cloud, whose hands and feet were tied tightly, were firmly gagged. Perez looked down at the loser lying at his feet with his indifferent eyes. It was terrible to see the tendons in his ankles cut and bloody. Yup. Nevertheless, the former Commander Knight of Angenes was still screaming some evil, but no one listened to it. It was the last remnant of Angenes, the end of the long that he missed while dealing with Angenes. He can't believe he found such a person unexpectedly in a place like this. It was an unexpected achievement. Ew. Perez, who was still watching Ethan Claus, twisting his body like a bug, glanced at the movements of the soldiers of Susu. They who suddenly arrested a wanted person sweated as they were preparing to move to the military ship with excitement at the thought of the bounty. Dripping. Is it a tradition of Angenes? Perez leaned slightly towards Ethan Claus and said in a low voice, the impatient thing. The former Empress and Patriarch Angenes used to ruin things in this way too. I guess the reason why you dared to board the cruise to the east while being chased was probably to target the Lombardi family. It was a fact known to all citizens of the empire that all the Lombardi family members attended Lorraine's wedding. The end. Now I think of it, Chanton is actually helps in capturing this criminal that might harm at Lorraine's wedding, right? I feel bad for swearing at him at the previous chapter. If you had just humbled yourself and lived in hiding according to the subject, you would have been able to live alone in honor of the Empress. Perez raised the corner of one of his lips wryly. This is the end of Angenes. Gasp. Yup. When Rabini was mentioned, Ethan Klaus rebelled even more, but it was all just a meaningless struggle. Excuse me, a man who seemed to be in charge among the Susu soldiers approached and talked to him. I received great help in arresting the wanted person. How many months have you been suffering from him? What's the name of this person? Perez raised his bent body and asked. Well, we don't know, but our superiors know. I see. Perez's guess was right. If they had known who Ethan Klaus was, the inspection would not have been conducted only by ordinary soldiers. Now I feel relieved. The soldier who muttered while looking at Ethan Klaus with disgusted eyes asked Perez carefully, by the way, your sword-handling hands look good. The person in charge seemed to be more sensible than expected. Perez pulled out a small medallion from his arms. It was an object imprinted with Chanton Susu's personal seal, and was proof that the holder was moving according to his orders. In the order of Lord Susu, I was on my way to the east in case of any danger. I knew it. The eyes of the responsible soldier who recognized the medal widened. I thought it was unusual to overpower the wanted person at once. The soldier, whose tone had become polite, all of a sudden nodded his head again and again. I will take responsibility and deliver Sir's performance to that the Lord knows. so that the Lord knows. Thank you. Saying that, Perez calmly placed the medallion on his pushed hands. By the time it reaches Chanton Susu, the ship will already be in the east. A few years ago, he brought what he used to travel to the south just in case, and it was useful. Then you will take the criminal to the imperial palace safely. Yes, don't worry. The soldier who was still holding the medal imprinted with Chanton Susu's seal replied with a voice full of enthusiasm. Paris gave Ethan Klaus a cold glance one last time and left them behind. Thinking about now how to deal with Ethan Klaus after his trip to the east, he moved as he as he as he breaking through the crowd, excited by the commotion from the moment ago and the expectations of the upcoming fireworks view. His red eyes found Florentia at once. It was always next to her, where he would go back. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Paris, who returned after handing Ethan Klaus to the soldiers of Susu, looked somewhat relieved. What Chanton Susu was looking for was Ethan Klaus. Oh, I laughed in vain when I recalled the past few days when I was nervous that the tight security was aimed at us. I thought he was following me because he knew I left for the east. I couldn't finish speaking. It was because Perez held both of my hands. Why are you shaking like this? As expected, I got caught. I could see my fingertips trembling finally on Perez's large hand. As expected, I can't hide it from you. Perez's forehead was wrinkled as if it hurt his feelings more when I tried to be okay. He let out a small sigh and put my hands together in one place and wrapped them in one another. Warmth spread through my cold hands. Ah, really, today I tried to set a romantic atmosphere. What else is Ethan Claus going to pop out of there? Don't you think so? Sorry. Instead of answering my question, Paris spoke in a deep voice. If I had moved a little faster, there would have been nothing for you to be afraid of. No, I shook my head. It was scary, but it wasn't because of Ethan Klaus. Then, I also looked down at my hand instead of answering. Before I knew it, the trembling of my fingertips stopped. What I was scared of was this. I looked at his red eyes and said, because I realized how great you are to me. Someone rushed to kill me. Of course, it was a situation that should have been scary, but I wasn't that scared. I thought everything would be fine just by the fact that you were next to me. It's very strange. A smirk leaked out. You are such a being, Perez. As if my shaking had shifted from a while ago, his red eyes were shaking. I slowly reached out and placed my hand on his cheek. It was like that last time. You can't be my first. Tia, you're right. I didn't mean to soothe Perez by lying awkwardly. As I said, I have a lot to protect, Lombardi and the people who follow me. However, it's you that makes me able to protect those people. Without you, I don't think I've been able to do a lot of work, and I can't. So, will you be by my side from now on? It was a bit of a selfish confession, but Perez laughed so that his eyes curved nicely and his red lips drew pretty arcs. Then I rubbed his cheek with my hand. Please, Perez sighed. Please let me be by your side, Tia. Boom, boom. Colorful fireworks exploded in the black night sky. I was buried in the deafening sound, but I could clearly read Perez's brief additions. For the rest of my life. Yeah, no more words were needed between us. Yeah, forever. Until the second and last day of this life ends. Boom, boom. The fireworks view that Cruz was proud of, and the people cheering for it all became distant noises. We left everything behind and walked to the room as if we had promised. Step by step, not slow but not too hasty, as we walked together, holding hands like that. We were in front of the tightly closed door of the room. However, Paris no longer moved on that spot. He gave strength to his hands and spoke as if throwing up. If I go inside now, I won't be able to stop. Red eyes fluttered at the flames that lit up the distant sky. Every moment it lit the fire like it was burning, and now my resolution in front of this darkened face is getting bigger and bigger. It just got tighter. I know. Do you know? Yes, I know. Wow, listening to the cheers from afar, as I smiled at Perez. That our cheers. That's our cheers. Tia, you don't have to overdo it. Click. With the sound of the door opening, Perez's speech stopped. I know everything, Perez. I opened the door as it was and led Perez into the dark room. End of chapter 273. Chapter 274. My whole body was numb, but that didn't wake me from sleep. Sarak, Sarak, there was a friendly stroke on my head. As I pushed my heavy eyelids up and opened my eyes, a view of the room I had become accustomed to in a few days came into view. A pillow that fell under the bed, a silk cover pushed at my feet, and Perez' eyes looking down at me. The blonde hair that had mesmerized me had disappeared, and his original black hair had returned. Last night, while taking a bath together, we removed the dye that was dyeing each other's hair. It was something I did half impulsively, like when I first changed my hair color, but seeing the familiar black hair I saw as soon as I opened my eyes was so welcome. It seemed like a good thing, especially since my hair is long. It took quite a while, but Paris carefully removed the black dye with great care. Then, beast, I said, squinted at Perez. I could only express it with these words, and Perez so coveted me. towards to Perez who coveted me. Everything started that night, the very night when there was a fireworks display. He hesitated so cautiously but outside the room door. Then the guy who entered the room holding my hand changed suddenly. It was like a hound with a broken leash. No, I must have loosened the leash with my hand. It's been a few days already. I patted my back, which seemed the muscles were tight, and buried my face on the pillow. As if drunk with strong alcohol, I looked back on the memories that remained sparsely. The night, which began with the sound of fireworks bursting from the outside, ended only after seeing the morning star. When the morning sun came up, I woke up at the touch of the hands wiping my body and did it again. And it was only when the sun went down that I barely woke up, ate the meal he had brought me, and once again and again. As I recalled the last few days when I had no clothes to wear, I could feel my face getting hot. Perez. Yes, Tia, he answered very sweetly, sweeping my hair that flowed forward. But now I don't fall for it. His neat appearance with the shirt button fastened to the bottom of the neck is as neat as a person who just went to work a while ago. But I'm not used to seeing Perez approaching me as he unbuttoned that button. I mean, are you really good at everything you do with your body? Hmm? Perez laughed bashfully. It was a smile that seemed to be shy at first glance, but it was not. That face that strangely pulled the corners of his mouth upwards is rather Tia. His rough long fingers passed by the side of my ears and greedily combed my hair. I have waited for a long time. There was a sticky corner somewhere in that half whispering voice. That's why. So, with a gradually lowering voice, the slanted face approached closer. I also appreciated the appearance with half dazed eyes. Oh, one face is so pretty. Wow, really? I almost got possessed again. I hurriedly raised my finger and blocked his lips. No. But Perez was not a man who would give up so easily. He blocked in advance with his large hand, clasped my fingers and kissed it. The warmth of his warm and thick sinking makes my fingertips tingled as if I had been electrified. Just once, he said it like he was whining. Tia, one more time. It was a sweet craving that would make me the worst person in the world if I didn't listen. You, this time, I'll take care of everything. Perez, should I? He's speaking so sadly. I don't think it's okay if I accept it one more time. Oh no, but I managed to close my eyes tightly. Give up, Perez. I almost fell for it again. I really can't. It's so hard. And you, I shouted with my eyes wide open, as seriously as possible. You're strong and last long. I can't stand that. I'll boil down again, like I'm going to faint. At my resolute refusal, a gloomy color spread in Perez's eyes that were shining like ruby. Should I have should I have accepted it? It was a moment when my heart was weakening. Kiss, a small shy sound, and the petal-like kiss fell on my forehead. Okay, Tia, then get up and eat something. The guy who came back to his usual clean face said, You haven't eaten anything since last night. Who caused it? It was because of someone who rushed, saying that the cream on the side of the meal was on my mouth. Yes, so I'll take you. Perez, who said with a smile, rolled up the white sheet and held me as I was. Then, as if he did not feel the weight, he strode and put me down in front of the table by the window. A wonderful meal with the bread, meat, fruit, and tea was waiting for me. When did you bring this? Well, about an hour ago. I thought I smelled something good. Then did you stay like that for an hour? When I woke up, Perez was watching me sleeping. Why didn't you wake me up instead of waiting? He murmured in a little embarrassment. Tia, I enjoyed watching you sleeping, that I lost track of time. What? Sorry, you must have been hungry. I'll wake you up earlier next time, Tia. You are more than me. I paused, talking involuntarily. No, I mean, Perez, you must have had a harder time. Let's just not talk. I shut my mouth and averted my gaze. Perez's low laughter crossed my ears, which must have turned red. Eat a lot, Tia. This time, Perez said and kissed my cheek. It was a word that felt like he was trying to get me fat and eat it. I glanced at him once and picked up a fork. However, contrary to how appetizing the food looked, my appetite did not move. I just picked some fruit and ate it, drank a few sips of hot tea and put it down. You don't have to eat more. I just want to rest like this a little longer, I answered, leaning my head against the back of the chair. The desire to sleep overcomes the appetite. I saw Perez making eye contact with me with a slow blinking vision. Perez, yes, Tia. When we arrive at Lumen, we have somewhere to go together. Even though it was not a long sentence, it was not easy to continue talking because of the drowsiness that came. Perez said, sweeping my cheek once, as if to go to sleep safely. Okay, I got it. I suddenly became curious. I think that's why I made a voice. The next line is like Tia mumbled half asleep. Why aren't you asking, Tia? About what, Perez? Where are we going, Tia? I promised you that we'd be together anywhere, Perez. Oh, so, Tia. Yes, so, Perez. It seemed that such conversations were exchanged. How long has it been? Tia. I opened my eyes again to the voice calling me, which more familiar to me than anyone else. I could see a slightly brighter room, but it was just that nothing has changed from when I closed my eyes. Even Paris, who is still looking at me affectionately next to me. How long have I slept? About 2 hours. Were you doing that again for 2 hours? Yes, Paris, you are seriously ill. Seeing my tired expression on my face, Paris shrugged his shoulders and smiled a little. I know, I can't stop you. Are you still tired? No, it's much better than before. Then would you like to see outside the window, Tia? Paris got up from his seat and walked to the window, and he opened the curtain that had been covering the window wide open. Wow, the sun poured in. I pulled up the seat and approached it as if possessed. Under the high sun, the light of the deep water was scattered, and in the distance, I saw water. A land where low, white buildings filled the high mountainside. It's Luman. With Paris' voice kissing my head, the cruise arrived at its destination. End of chapter 274. Chapter 275. After hurriedly washing and getting ready, the ship was just entering the port. It's really Luman, I muttered as I leaned against the railing on the deck. I couldn't believe that the center of the East Luman, which I always heard from the type above the report and the stories of people around me, was spread out in front of my eyes. Pretty. It was exactly what Avenox once told me. White buildings with blue and red roofs on its top, people dressed in colorful patterns, and narrow alleys, tangled like spider webs, blended together like a painting. And there was something that made the scene even more perfect. It was the joyful, singing voice of the port workers waiting to unload the cruise ship. Splash, splash. Is it the sound of waves or the sound of rowing? Is it the sound of footsteps coming back, my dear, who has gone for? It was as Avenox said. It was an Eastern tradition to play music and sing along the shore while waiting for the return of the family who went out to the sea. Even when I first heard the Eastern folk song, which was exciting but somewhat sad. It was familiar and friendly to my ears. I was singing along to the song without realizing it, but Paris approached me and admired me briefly. It's incomparable to what it was a few years ago. Does that mean that it has prospered that much? Yes. If it wasn't for cruise destination, it was anchored incorrectly in another city. You might have thought that. What was Luman like before the Eastern trade began? Was it a small city with a much more secluded and beautiful seaside than it is now? I suddenly became curious. Perhaps he had read my thoughts, but Perez, who hugged me tightly from behind, kissed my head and informed me there were not as many large dams as there are now. There were only a couple of them for trade with the eastern continent. The area over there with a lot of warehouses was a stony empty plain, and there were quite a few restaurants near the harbor. What about that big building up there? It looks a little new, doesn't it? It was originally a residential area. A lot has changed. Wow, that's really cool. It seems that there are many restaurants and inns along the harbor. How about leaving after having a meal over there, Tia? There are usually many restaurants near the stations and ports. I nodded quickly. Let's have a meal and go to the Lumen branch of Pellet Corporation in the port. From there, we will be traveling in a carriage for a few more hours. We have arrived in Lumen, but our journey is not over yet. There is a real destination. Paris quietly listened to my explanation and replied with a smile. Wherever you go, Tia. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After filling up our stomachs at the restaurant we accidentally entered, we headed to the pellet store. Coincidentally, the big building I pointed to on the cruise a while ago was the branch of the Pellet Corporation. Welcome. What brought you here? As soon as I stepped into the store, a lively voice asked me, Hello, I've come to see the manager, Brady Locke. Brady, a man with particularly pale skin and reddish brown hair, has been an employee who has worked with Violet since the first Gallihan clothing store was opened. It was about a year and a half ago that Brady Locke was appointed as the manager of the Lumen branch, which is one of the most important areas. It was a personal change that occurred when I became the head of Lombardy and Violet became the chief of the top of the Pellet Corporation. If it's the manager, he's upstairs. The manager of the Pellet Corporation was not a person who could be met because someone said he would meet him. Did you make a previous appointment? It was when the staff carefully started the word, wondering how to explain this well. Lord, a man in his mid-30s ran down the stairs from the upper floor with a slight rattling noise. Oh, you're here. It seems that Violet had already told Brady Locke. It's been a while, Brada. How have you been? Yes, of course, thanks to the Lord and the Lombardi family. Well, then, this person, Brady, who belatedly found Perez standing next to me, shook his hand and bowed. It is my honor to greet you in this way, Your Majesty. When I turned around at the strange sound of a leaking wind, the employee who had just greeted us was standing there with a pale face. Lombardi, Your Majesty. I didn't mean to reveal who we were here, but it didn't really matter. We have already arrived in the East, and there is nothing that Chanton Susu can do. If he finds out later that I have moved with Perez first, Luman is a friendly land to Lombardy in many ways. I smiled softly at the employee who seemed to have been struck by lightning, and then asked Brady, I want to have tea together, but there is something waiting for us. Can I get into the carriage right away, Brady? Of course, I've got everything ready. Give me your luggage. The manager of the Pallet Corporation took the bag from Perez's hand like a porter. The carriage was already in front of the side door of the branch. It was a carriage that was fully prepared as the road ahead was a little rough. This carriage will take you to there. The coachman was also very skilled. Thank you, Brada. See you at the wedding in a few days. Yes, be careful on your way to your destination. Brady Locke didn't straighten his back until he could no longer see our carriage. Passers-by who recognized of such manager of the pellet corporation, were seen chattering. Only then will the rumor spread. I shook my head and laughed, then yawned a little. Are you tired? Perez, who had been looking out the window and watching the streets of Lumen until now, noticed it like a ghost and asked, a little bit. Are you sick, Tia? I think your stamina is too weak. Tia, and hey, you, the owner of the body which is strong and lasts long, how can you said that after rolling a lady after a few days? It's not that I have weak stamina. It's that I use too much stamina. I shouldn't speak. Perez laughed as he turned his head without speaking. As expected, he knew everything but made fun of me. Where have I suffering from? I changed my mind about leaning against the wall of the carriage and closing my eyes, and laid down on Perez's legs as pillow. We will have to go for about 3 hours from now. Wake me up when we arrive. No matter how steely Perez is, if you put his lap as pillow for 3 hours, his legs will go numb. I closed my eyes, pretending not to know. Of course, I really didn't mean to bother Perez for hours. I was going to pretend to sleep for a while and wake up. Sarak, Sarak. A large hand began to caress my head. Oh, you can't do this. I really fall asleep. Thinking like that, I tried to get up, but my eyes were really starting to blur. I looked up before falling asleep completely, and Paris was looking at me with a more comfortable smile than ever. Sleep tight, Tia. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Are you really okay? Yes. Are you really not numb at all? How can a person be like that? At my continuing question, Paris tilted his head as if he did not know what the problem was. It was only a few hours. Normally it's hard even for an hour, Perez. Is that so? Paris shrugged with a relaxed face as if he did not understand. I think the next 10 hours will be fine. I feel like I lost. I forgot for a moment that Perez's body, which pulls out the aurora, is very different from the ordinary people. Is it because you're tired? Do you want to sleep more? No, I shook my head. It wasn't because of that. We're almost there. Your destination is this, here. I arrived at the place where I, who was hated by Chantonsusu's counterattack, hid my identity and advanced my journey for several days. It's hard to understand why such an important place is in the middle of such an empty farmland. Just in time, the carriage was slowly stopping. I first opened the carriage door wide and said to Perez, "Let's go, they'll be waiting for us." My steps, to take the lead, were a little faster than usual. I couldn't help it because I was excited. Tia, you'll fall. You worry too much, Perez. Of course, this was my first time here. However, the map of this place, which I have seen several times since the day it was built, was clear in my mind. A straight road that cuts through the plains, wide enough to be hard to see the end. On both sides of it, a golden ripe crops swayed in the wind, and on the road there stood the person I had been wanting to see for a long time. Lorraine! At my call, Lorraine, wearing Luman's signature blue dress, looked back. Lorraine, wearing a large hat that blocks the sunlight, smiled wider than ever with his golden field in the background. The end, Lorraine is the character that with constant angelic atmosphere from the beginning of this novel until now. Tia. I barely went back and forth from the mansion to the greenhouse to see her. It's really the soft Lorraine, right? Lorraine, who ran without a break, came and hugged me. It's been so long. How have you? Of course, Lorraine looks very healthy too. We checked each other's well-being for such a long time. Oh my, look at my mind. Have you been well, Your Majesty? Long time no see, Lorraine. Paris also greeted Lorraine warmly. However, he looked like someone who has the question did not seem to have been solved. Anyway, it was a trip to the east that I had planned to attend the wedding of Lorraine and Avenox. It was a face that did not understand why I had left Lombardy so quickly. I approached Perez and asked, "You still don't know?" I took him by the hand and led him to the field by the road. Saw. Just then, a long wind blew across the field. Perez indifferently threw his gaze towards the place. That was the moment the red eyes shook once. "Now you know, right? The reason why I asked you to accompany me. Tia, this is..." Perez reached out the crops in disbelief. However, the tickling sensation that rubs against his palm is the real thing that does not disappear. Yeah, wait, Perez. Saw, ripe wheat danced in unison in the wind that rushed in like a wave. Now, the east is also producing wheat. End of chapter 275.